Hey, and welcome to Raising Well-Nourished Kids, where we aim to kind of help make your life easier as a carer or a parent.
Absolutely.
So today we are going to talk about how important or how helpful the freezer can be to create quick, nutritious school lunches.
Yeah. Before I had kids, I don't know about you, but I just didn't use my freezer.
No.
Like, honestly, there would be, like, it was practically empty. There was like a tray of ice, maybe the occasional tub of ice cream or a packet of frozen peas would be about it. But once my kids started school, I discovered how essential freezing food can be for saving time, especially when it comes to packing a healthy kind of whole foods lunch as quickly and easily as possible. Like, for me, it's an absolute game changer. And, you know, with a well-stocked freezer, a few leftovers, I can whip up a packet-free school lunch in less than 5 minutes. And I've timed it over and over again for all those people who keep coming to me and saying, it's not possible. It is possible.
I think this is what I've learned a lot from you. It's like just the freezing and what you can freeze and what you can't freeze. And
which we're going to cover today.
How you can kind of get into a routine around it.
Yeah, it's a lifesaver on those hectic school mornings. Like, I've had kids who've been swimmers. So, you know, our mornings have started at 4:30 in the morning. And then, you know, the kids are walking in the door back again, you know, by like kind of 7 o'clock in the morning and have to be back out of the door by 7:30. So it's like breakfast, lunchbox. And I've always packed the lunch boxes in the morning. I haven't done it the night before, although I know that does work for some people. For me, it works perfectly well just doing it fresh in the morning. And I live in Queensland, so you know, I find that things probably go off a lot quicker than if you're in a cooler climate. But you know, I know it's that time of the year, isn't it, where parents are back to school?
Yes, gosh.
At least here in Queensland it is.
And I know for me, like, so the first few years of my kids' school career, I didn't know you.
No.
And school lunches really used to daunt me. They used to be a thing where I'd be like, oh God.
What to do.
Yes, totally.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, it's been my best-selling ebook, that's for certain. It's called The Well-Nourished Lunchbox. And I think the fact that, you know, we've sold over 10,000 copies of that ebook. And I also run like a packing lunchboxes course and program, and both of them have been incredibly popular, and I think that's because the pain is real.
Totally.
The lunchbox packing pain is real.
And just thinking of something new.
For those of us that don't want to pack packets, because that's obviously the next best solution.
And it's got to be nut free and all these
absolutely
things.
And for a lot of schools it has even gone beyond nuts. Like, a lot of schools are like egg free these days, and like there's a lot of restrictions. So today I just wanted to share, I'm going to stick with just 5 of my favorite freezer friendly foods that just will help you to, as I said, pack that nourishing, delicious school lunchbox just in a matter of minutes. So the first thing for me is cooked meat. I learned very early on that good quality protein is really essential for keeping my kids focused and energized, not just my kids, all kids, throughout the school day. And because I do my best to avoid processed meats or deli meats in their lunchbox, because they are, as their name suggests, they're processed. And I try and avoid processed foods as much as possible. I resorted to doing things like dicing and portioning leftover roast meat, or barbecue meat or grilled meat. So if I was cooking, say, one roast chicken, I would throw another chicken in the oven, pull the meat off of it, dice it up, and portion it either in small glass containers or silicone bags. And it was always there to use in sandwiches or wraps or rolls or sushi or fresh spring rolls, or sometimes I'd do, you know, like a little pasta kind of dish where I'd mix the meat in with some cooked pasta that was also left over from perhaps a meal the night before.
I love hearing you talk, because I'm always like, oh, yeah, I've got to do that again.
Yeah, even meatballs, like this week on my plan is to cook some meatballs because they freeze really well. And they're also a favourite with my kids, and I also sneak a few veggies in there.
So you just cook extras?
A lot of the time, Sometimes I'll batch cook. Like, I'll just do, this week I'll cook.
Like with the meatballs, will you do that?
So the meatballs this week, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cook a double quantity of meatballs. half of them are going to be mixed with pasta and a tomato-based sauce for a meal, for dinner.
Yeah.
And the other half I'll keep separately, and they'll either go in the lunchbox as just like meatballs with some, cut up bits of veggies, or they can be sliced and added as protein to like wraps and rolls and sandwiches as well. So, yeah, it just gives me another option.
So versatile.
Yeah, it does. It just gives me an option. So, when you've got portioned cooked meat that's been frozen, you just need to defrost the meat in the fridge overnight. So that's probably the most thought it requires, is just the night before you need to remember just to defrost the meat, just so it's ready to go in the morning. If you're packing in the morning, obviously. If you're packing the night before, then you'll need to remember to defrost it the morning that you're packing.
Yeah.
The other thing that I've always frozen and continue to freeze to this day is bread. I used to live in an area where there wasn't ready access to shops and bakeries. Now I live in an area where I have an incredible bakery that's just minutes away from me. So my son is blessed by getting fresh rolls on my walk every morning. I come home and he'll get a fresh sourdough roll. Straight off the tray. But instead of buying bread with heaps of preservatives, like if your kids are bread lovers, I'd really encourage you to do a bit of research and find a good quality additive-free, preferably sourdough bread. And if you find that, it can be sliced if it's a whole loaf, or if it's pre-sliced, great. And then just freeze it. I freeze in often a paper bag, which I then put inside a cloth bag. Or sometimes I'll use 2 cloth bags. It just depends. So that's I prefer to store as much as I can possibly do so plastic free. But again, that's just my personal preference.
Why sourdough?
Look, sourdough has multiple strains of yeast in it, natural yeast. When you're buying just a regular yeast leaven bread, it's one single strain. Like if it's baker's yeast that's in there, it's one single strain of yeast. And we know that the more diverse the microflora in the gut is, the better off our health is going to be. And I have seen a lot of people who supposedly have issues with bread or gluten, who I've discovered just through clinical practice that it actually wasn't the bread and the gluten that was the issue for them. They had an overgrowth of yeast, and it was coming from that repeatedly eating that same single strain of yeast, which had overtaken all of their, or really reduced the diversity in their gut flora. Which then can go on to cause allergies and all range of health conditions, nervous system issues. It goes on and on. So for me, if you are eating bread and if it is something your kids enjoy eating, as I said, finding a good quality bread is a really great idea. And I mean, look, when I first started practicing, it was really hard to find bread.
Totally.
Nowadays, you have so many choices of bread. It's becoming more and more
so good, I reckon.
Accessible. I mean, really all bread should be is flour, salt, water, and culture.
And then that longer fermentation process, hey?
The longer fermentation process, a lot of people, will report when they go places like Italy that the bread doesn't upset their stomach. It's because it's made in a traditional method where it's fermented over a long period of time, whereas our commercial breads are sometimes fermented within 15 minutes.
Oh, wow.
So,
Compared to 24 hours.
Exactly.
Wow.
And they add in a heap of additives and processes that accelerate that fermentation period and add, as I said, excess amounts of single strain yeast. Look, I make, not religiously, but I make my own sourdough. We have a sourdough tutorial in the Well-Nourished Family membership, like a video tutorial that teaches you how to do this really simple process, because it's expensive as well. Sourdough loaves are expensive.
They are.
And I know a lot of people think, oh my God, before I started making sourdough, I used to think it was just I'm not a natural baker. I'm a natural cook, but I'm not a natural baker. So the thought of making sourdough for me was just oh my God, that's something I will never be able to do. And I just, at one point, my budget really dictated that I needed to start cutting some corners. So I thought, well, that's something that I can do instead of paying $10 for a loaf.
Yeah.
It cost me 50 cents in flour.
Yeah.
And I got a free sourdough culture off a friend that was, baking.
Yeah.
And it's like anything. I've just done it enough times now that it's literally like I could close my eyes and it takes so little time. It takes a long time in just the leaving of the loaf, but most of the work is just done on the benchtop without any hands-on activity. So it's just getting the steps and the stages right and working out the fermentation periods, because it does change. Like we're heading into warmer weather now.
Yeah.
So the fermentation window it happens quicker.
Yeah.
So it is something that it's, I think, very worthwhile learning.
Yeah.
But I can completely understand if you feel like you don't have the space. Once you've learnt it, it doesn't take a lot of brain power. To start with, it does though.
I'm just thinking, like how a loaf of sourdough is $10.
Yeah.
I find with my kids they always ate less.
Yeah. That's true.
Yeah, so you go through less of the bread, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's more nutrition in it. And
it's not like it's not cloudy and fluffy like a lot of just your tip top breads and stuff, supermarket breads. Yeah. Excuse me. When another thing that I always fill my freezer with are baked goodies. Whenever I bake treats like cakes, cookies, biscuits, savoury crackers, slices, muffins, I always double batch, always. And then I freeze them in just big airtight containers. Excuse me, I've been talking too much now. I've got a frog in my throat. Things like crackers, cookies, bliss balls, they can go straight into the container. For things like muffins, slices, cakes, like things that are a bit more spongy, I tend to do one of two things. I'll either lay them onto a baking tray or even the tray they were cooked on, and I snap freeze them. So snap freezing is basically just putting that tray in the freezer, letting the muffins get hard enough for you then just to stack them into the airtight container. So, this will only take kind of 12 to 24 hours to snap freeze them. Otherwise, if you don't want to snap freeze, you can put them into a container straight away, but you need to separate each of the layers with baking paper because otherwise they'll stick together. So by double batching, that just means that I don't enjoy baking particularly, even though that's what I do for a living. I love cooking, but again, as I said, I'm not a natural baker, so it always entails a lot more work for me recipe developing, particularly sweet things. I'm a lot better than I was. It's like anything. You get better. The more you do it, the quicker all of these things become, and then before you know it, you're whipping up things with your eyes shut. So I only bake, once every kind of, depends obviously who's eating what and how much they're eating, but sometimes it might even be like every 3 to 4 weeks that I'm baking. But I always have that stash of homemade nourishing snacks in the freezer. So baked goodies, they can be packed into the lunchbox straight from the freezer, basically, unless your kid's lunchbox is going in a fridge and then they'll need to be defrosted.
Yes.
I've been caught out before with this. I sent my son to a school holiday program and I didn't realise that their lunches were getting put like in this industrial-sized fridge that was so cold, like almost freezer cold. So I'd packed him, I never forget it, lemon blueberry, like a yogurt cake into his lunch. And
he would have been devastated.
No.
I wasn't.
No, quite the opposite. I picked him up and he's like, Mum, that cake tastes incredible frozen. Like it's like a cakey ice cream, kind of ice block. He goes, can I have it frozen all of the time? Anyway, no, he's not.
Good. It was
he's not easily deterred. That's for certain when it comes to food. Anyway, things like yogurt, smoothies, chia puddings. They can all be frozen in like little cups or refillable food pouches and packed in the lunchbox from frozen. And by morning tea or lunch, they're going to be defrosted enough to eat. My kids especially love this in summer, and it just also keeps the rest of the lunchbox cold as well. It works well. We've got like chia pudding recipes on the Well-Nourished website. There's also one called a fruity whip that's got like a sneaky kind of, it's got avocado in it actually that the kids can't taste. It's on the website and it's actually in my lunchbox ebook as well. My kids love it. And it has like a soft serve consistency that the avocado gives it, which is great. I also do pack and freeze leftover soups and curries and casseroles. And what I do is I portion them out, freeze them, and then I heat them in the morning and pack them into a thermos flask for lunch. So that's perfect for winter. I generally will use like just recycled glass jars or little Pyrex containers to freeze leftovers. And then I'll generally, again, defrost them the night before, gently heat them up in a little pot, put a bit of boiling water into the thermos just to heat that up as well. And then the kids have a lovely hot lunch. So they're the 5 ways that I would use my freezer the most for lunches specifically. The fruit and veggie component of my kids' lunchbox is often the only part that I actually prepare fresh in the morning, or if I'm making a sandwich or a roll or something, with that defrosted meat, that would also be made fresh. But, now that my kids are old enough to pack their own lunches, the freezer's even more important because it just helps them to choose healthy options.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
I love hearing you just reminding me of all these things that I forget about.
Yeah.
So thank you.
That's all right.
Yeah.
It's like my zone of genius.
Yeah, it's brilliant. It's great.
It's something I love. So, and I hope this episode has given you some inspiration to start using your freezer just to help you to pack really healthy whole food lunches for your kids. Freezing, if you found any of these tips helpful, please do remember to share the podcast with other parents and subscribe for more kind of practical episodes, which we have so many planned out.
We've got loads planned.
Yeah, exciting. Until next time, happy parenting. We'll see you soon.
Yes, bye.
Bye.